আচ্ছা, আগের ক্লাসে যারা ছিলে আমাকে একটু বলবে আমি কত অবধি করিয়েছিলাম। হ্যাঁ, এই ফ্রি ডেফিনেশন গুলো হয়ে গেছিল আমার মনে আছে, মিউ স্পেসটা আমি বুঝিয়েছিলাম আমার মনে আছে, আর গামা স্পেস অবধি বলেছিলাম বোধহয়, না? তারপরে কেন কোয়ান্টাম স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্স রিকোয়ার্ড এটাও বলেছিলাম, তাই তো? এই স্লাইডটা, হ্যাঁ এই স্লাইডটা অবধি বোধহয় বলেছিলাম যে কোয়ান্টাম স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্স কি কি রকমের হয় আর তারপরে দুটো পার্ট। ঠিক আছে, এটার থেকে আমি রিক্যাপিচুলেশন শুরু করছি করে। So this we had already done. We saw that the main, not I wouldn't say flaw, but what classical mechanics or classical statistics did not take into consideration was that they did not think about changing or altering the fact that all energy levels are accessible to all particles, okay, and all particles are distinguishable. So in Maxwell-Boltzmann statistics, we do not have any restriction to the number of particles in a level. We do not have any restriction about the individuality of the particles. We do not have any restriction about the accessible energy levels of the particles, okay, and also they do not interact with each other during collisions. But there are systems where there are identical or indistinguishable particles. For example, if you are considering light, then all photons are identical. You cannot say this is photon A and this is photon B. They are all identical. Electrons, they are all identical. They might have different speeds. Because of their different speeds, they will occupy different positions in the phase space, because different speeds indicate different momenta, although their masses are same. But they are, I mean, it's like how would I? It's like all a number of, say, similar colored balls, say a number of white balls in a particular chamber, moving around, maybe with different velocities, but they look identical. They are all identical particles. They don't have any individuality other than their position in the phase space, okay. And another thing is that the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, that leads to multiplicity of energy states, you know, degeneracy. A particular energy state might have more than one uh, quantum state belonging to the same energy level, okay. So that combined with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, that was also not taken into account. And of course, as I told you, there was no restriction to the number of particles that can occupy a particular cell, particular allowed cell, which is given by Pauli's exclusion principle. Because if Pauli's exclusion principle is applied, then one cell can have only one occupant. More than one occupancy is not allowed by Pauli's exclusion principle, okay. And of course there were experimental observations like black body radiation, photoelectric, with the entire of quantum radiation that we studied just before this, all that predicted that something else should be taken into account in order to explain experimental phenomena too. Okay, so all this gave, just like several experimental observations gave rise to quantum mechanics from classical mechanics, similarly these also led to the formulation of quantum statistics from classical statistics. Okay, not that classical statistics is wrong, just like classical mechanics. Maxwell-Boltzmann statistics perfectly describes, say, gas particles in a chamber, okay, but then that is the classical limit, beyond which we have to think of something else. So comes quantum statistics. So there are two types of sort of scheme of things, following which we have either Bose-Einstein statistics or Fermi-Dirac statistics. Okay, now Bose-Einstein statistics is, from now onwards we will always denote it by BE, and Fermi-Dirac by FD. Of course, Fermi-Dirac will be done by Bappa sir. I will be doing only the Bose-Einstein part. Now, quantum statistics means the system has a very, very large number of identical and indistinguishable particles. Okay, they all look the same, and you cannot distinguish one from the other. All clones of one another. Okay. So we represent the system by a wave function. Since it's quantum statistics, so we represent the system by a wave function of many body state. Remember, we will now have to consider the many body wave function, not just a single body like we did in hydrogen atom. Up to hydrogen atom, we could consider it to be a single body problem, but now since the system contains a large number of particles, we have to consider the many body state wave function. Okay, where R1, R2, R3, etc. are the position coordinates, including the spin. This is very important. Position coordinates including the spin of the particles, which are identified as the first particle, second particle, third particle, etc. Okay. The sign of the wave function, if that remains unchanged on interchanging the coordinates of a pair of identical particles, okay, then we call it a symmetric wave function. See, I have changed the position of the first two. It was R1, R2, I have changed to R2, R1, but the sign remains unchanged. Then the wave function is symmetric. On the other hand, if it does change, if on changing the position R1, R2 change to R2, R1, changes the sign, gives me a wave function with opposite sign, then the wave function is called antisymmetric, and for symmetric wave function, B statistics is followed. For antisymmetric wave function, FD statistics is followed. Okay. So, by looking at the condition that whether by changing the position of a pair of identical particles, the wave function remains the same in sign or changes to the opposite sign, we will decide whether we will apply B statistics or FD statistics. Okay. Now, symmetric wave function is for particles which has spin angular momentum to be 0 or integral multiple of h cut, where h is Planck's constant. Okay. So, when the spin angular momentum of a particle is denoted by nh cut, n being 0 or any integral, we say that means that the particle will have a symmetric wave function. Whereas antisymmetric wave function is for particles for which the spin angular momentum is half integral multiple of h cut. Okay. So as a consequence, we have two types of particles. Quantum particles thus can be divided into two classes: those having integral multiple of h cut spin angular momentum, and the others having half integral multiple of h cut spin angular momentum. Okay. So these are therefore bosons and fermions. Bosons after S.N. Bose, our very own Shoshendranath Bose, and I mean, I can't stop me from repeating this over and over again, that this person did not get a Nobel Prize, which sort of, at least for us, it shows, I'm not demeaning the prize or the Royal Society in any way, but still I somehow personally feel that it's all very futile. An entire class of particles in the universe, I mean half the particles of the universe are named after this person. They follow the equation given by this person, and he did not receive the coveted prize. Okay, so anyway, discussion will go in another direction. So anyway, boson after Shoshendranath Bose, and fermions after Enrico Fermi, of course. So bosons have particles with spin angular momentum 0 h cut, 2 h cut, etc. integral multiple. Fermions have half h cut, 3 by 2 h cut, 5 by 2 h cut, etc. Here for bosons the wave functions are symmetric, whereas for fermions wave functions are antisymmetric. we have to remember that bosons are quantum particles, identical and indistinguishable, but they do not follow Pauli's exclusion principle. So they are friendly particles. They can stay together. Each cell can accommodate more than one particle. So there is no restriction to the number of particles that can stay in a particular compartment. Okay. Even if the space is small, they will sit one on top of the other and they'll accommodate. However, fermions do obey Pauli's exclusion principle, and therefore one compartment can contain only one fermion. Very unfriendly particle. They will not allow others to stay with them. Okay. So no a priori restriction to the number of bosons in a given quantum state, and there is restriction only one fermion per quantum. Example, just a second please. Example of boson is photon, spin 1, phonons. Phonons, I don't know if you have heard of phonons. Phonons are the particles that describe sound energy. Okay, the unit of sound energy. We are not used to describing sound energy or vibrational energy using particle nature, but as you can understand, that's a wave, and that also should be having quantized behavior. And when you do, if you do advanced solid state physics in future, those of you who will be doing advanced solid state physics in future, you will see that at the atomic level, the vibrational properties of the atoms in solids give rise to the all the the solid state phenomena, and that using quantum mechanics is described when we take the unit of, just like unit of electromagnetic wave is photon, similarly unit of vibrational waves is phonon. Then there are pi mesons which have spin 0. Okay, pi mesons are existent in the nucleus. Whereas fermions are electrons, electrons have spin half, positrons have spin half. Positrons are the antiparticles of electrons. Mu mesons. See, mesons are again of two classes. Pi mesons being bosons and mu mesons being fermions having spin half. Okay, so if you go through a little bit of particle physics, you know that the number of particles is huge, but they can all be categorized into these two groups, either bosons or fermions. Okay. Now let us, so up to here actually we did in our last class. This is where I ended the last class. So before moving on further, I want to share a little note on the constant H. Okay. We know H is Planck's constant because of all the quantum mechanics that we have done, but H has a very vital role to play when we formulate the quantum statistical mechanics. Okay. Now in classical statistical mechanics, the cell size in the phase space is given by dx dpx in the x direction, okay, which I can denote by a constant h0. Phase space means position momentum space, which we had discussed in the last class, and there a particular cell size is denoted by h0. Now this h0 can be made arbitrarily small. Okay, there is no limitation to the smallness of the value of h0. It can be as small as possible, totally up to how we are formulating the given problem. We can make the cell in the, so dx is infinitesimally small, dpx is infinitesimally small, the product dx dpx is also infinitesimally small, and there is no restriction to this smallness in classical statistical mechanics. So now if you consider that there are gi number of cells in a compartment, okay, in the phase space we have a compartment, and say there are gi number of cells in that compartment. Okay, please, I don't think I've drawn this picture. So imagine, um, so for example here, for example in this picture, okay, this is the xpx space, the momentum space. Now here, as you can see, there are 10 large compartments. Can you see the 10 large compartments? Each of them are again divided into smaller cells, and some of these cells are occupied. The size of these small cells, each large compartment, is again divided into 5 into 4, 45 smaller cells. Okay, so each of these cells has the size dx dpx. So this GI is 45 for each compartment over here. Okay, sorry, 20, I'm sorry. Each compartment, each rectangular compartment, so there are 10 large rectangular compartments. Each rectangular compartment is again divided into 20 small compartments. Okay, these 20 compartments, each of these 20 compartments has the size dx dpx, and this 20 is what I mean by the number GI. Okay, so GI is the number of small cells that are available for the particles to occupy. Okay, now this number GI can be made as large as we please. Okay, so that GI may be made much larger than the number of particles Ni available to the ith compartment. So again, I'll go back to that picture and I'll show you what I mean. So see, if you take a particular compartment, so there are 20 cells at the moment and only 2 of them are occupied. So say suppose we have 2 particles sitting in these 2 cells. So total number of available cells are 20 and number of particles is 2. Now this total number of available cells can be further increased if I decrease the size of each cell. If I further decrease the value of dx and dpx, then the size of each of this small cell will further decrease. Okay, so then the number of compartments, the value of GI in a given compartment will increase. It will be more than 20, and it can be made 100, 1000. You know what I'm trying to say. So GI can be increased as much as possible because there is no restriction to the smallness of a particular cell, but the number of particles that will occupy these cells remains 2. Okay, so why I am saying this is that to emphasize the fact that GI is much greater than Ni, where Ni is the number of particles that are there to occupy the cells. Okay, so GI in a given ith compartment, GI is very large compared to Ni. Okay, so the ratio Ni by GI, which is called the occupation index, in this case is much less than 1. So in classical statistics, where there is no restriction to the smallness of a compartment, we can make the number of available cells in a given ith compartment as large as possible, so that its value becomes much greater than the number of particles which are there to occupy the cells. We are therefore making the occupation index, the ratio of Ni and Gi, much less than 1. Okay. So the probability of a particular cell containing more than a single particle is negligible. If there are a very large number of cells available for occupation, but the number of particles to occupy those cells is very less, so obviously one cell containing more than a single particle is very rare. If there are say 100 chairs in a room and only 5 people get in, so 5 people will want to sit comfortably in 5 separate chairs, right? Whereas if there are only say 4, there is a 4-seater sofa and 5 people come in, then 5 people will have to, ঠেসাঠেসি করে বসতে হবে. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Is it clear?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
when 5 people try to sit on a 4-seater sofa, then I mean from very far away you cannot say distinguish them properly. They are huddled together. Whereas if 5 people sit comfortably, separately, far away from each other in 5 separate seats, then there is no question of uh, difficulty in distinguishing them. They are totally individually distinguishable. Understood? So in classical mechanics, there is no problem of particles being indistinguishable to the observer, since the occupation index is much less than 1. It's like it's like that a very utopian condition where there are a lot of jobs available and a very few job seekers. Then life would become so comfortable. Each person would comfortably get a job, and even then there would be several posts would still remain vacant. But unfortunately life is difficult, and obviously here the occupation index is not much less than 1. So just to show you what I have been talking about, this is my phase space, pxx space, and I have here how many cells? Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 cells are 49 cells. I have a 49 cell compartment. So Gi, the available cells to the particles is 49. Suppose I have 10 particles which I throw into this compartment to occupy the 49 seats. So randomly, since they will randomly choose seats, so they are randomly. However, since they have each one, so the first person has 49 seats in front of her. So she go and sits in any one of them. The second person has 48 seats, available seats. So she go and sits in one of them. The third person has 47 seats available. So he or she go and sits. So even the 10th person will have 40 seats available in front of him. So he has ample choice and he will go and sit in any one of them. Okay. So, and after all the seats are occupied by particles, the available, so there are only 10 particles. So they will obviously occupy 10 seats. They can't occupy more than 10 seats. And since the number of seats available is so large compared to the number of particles sitting on them, so they are, each of them are totally distinguishable. The particles are clearly distinguishable. Okay. And therefore, in this situation, we can safely apply classical statistical mechanics. Clear now? Is this thing clear now? Okay, so I'll move on to the next slide. However, there are natural systems where Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is obeyed, and therefore there is a limitation to the smallness of the cell size. When we are in the phase space, which means x, px. So the size of a cell is dx dpx, and the value of dx and dpx in quantum mechanics is limited by Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. All of you know that. Delta, the product delta x, delta px cannot be lesser than the value of h cut by 2. Delta x, delta px greater than equal to h, of the order of some value close to h, right? So there is this restriction imposed on the cell size when we are dealing with particles that follow quantum mechanics. So the moment you apply Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, you can no longer make the cells as small as you wish. There is a restriction to the smallness of the cell. So in the three directions, dx dpx can be at most
ম্যাম আওয়াজ আসছে না। ম্যাম আওয়াজ আসছে না কিছু।